Do you see anyone in the race right now that if they were the nominee, you would vote for Trump instead?
You'll be doing things you don't like doing in order to go on living, that is, to go on doing things you don't like doing, which is stupid. Better to have a short life that is full of what you like doing than a long life spent in a miserable way.
Hey! Man, there's a pretty face. Hello, Q. How you doing? All right. This is good. Welcome back, you guys. Thank you very much for joining us. Joining us. Thank you very much for joining us. This is another episode of Q the Nurse. On this channel, I bring you news, current events, and fun topics for nurses and healthcare providers everywhere. And today is a very, very special episode of the nursing news because it's the first time I ever bring a friend, a good friend in that. Tina V from Good Nurse, Bad Nurse. She's joining me today to go down this week's news. Tina, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, ladies and gentlemen, so you guys are going to have to bear with me, bear with us. In fact, I wanted this to be live. I just am still figuring out the kinks and how to make sure that it works and to get her a video to see the both of us, get both the sound. There's a lot of technicalities when it comes to all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sure is. But we'll get there soon enough. But until then, we'll do this the old school way. And then I'll try to post this as soon as possible. But Tina, you ready?
I'm ready.
So you guys, this is good stuff. So I'm going to tell you what the lineup for today's news is. But Tina is so good, she already has added to the list. She has her own story ready, prepped to go. Okay. So I'm going down the list of stories that we're going to go to today, and there's going to be some fun stories, some weird stories, some sad stories, but we've got stories. So first of all, we'll start off by talking about all of these nursing homes and assisted livings that are trying to prep for this Dorian hurricane that's coming our way. We're going to talk about nurse suicide. Is it going up? Is it going down? You wait and find out. We're going to talk about some pre-shift habits that all nurses should do, could do, would do to have good days. We're going to talk about an elderly couple that ended up committing suicide. After you find out why they did that, you're going to ask yourself, why? Just why is life? And then lastly, the story that Tina brought with us. We're going to talk about a nurse that lost his job for social media reasons. Tina, I wanted to ask you before I got into the story. Have you ever lived in a place where a hurricane came and did its damage? Like, have you ever been in a situation where you had to evacuate for a hurricane for like a big storm or anything like that, weather-wise?
No, I've never lived anywhere where that would be an issue, and I've never been on vacation when a hurricane was coming through. But in Nashville, I used to live in Nashville, and that's kind of a tornado area. So I've kind of experienced something sort of similar because it's sort of tornado alley, get right through the middle of Tennessee. We get a lot of those. And flooding as well.
Oh, jeez and Lord. Well, maybe you can help us when we get to those nitty-gritties, because I don't know. I feel like I'm going to be one of them. If I ever were to live in one of them situations, I feel like I'm going to be one of those guys that like, let me power through this. But we'll see. Let's see. Let me give you guys the details of the story, and then we'll talk about how we feel about it. So hundreds of Florida nursing homes don't meet the requirement ahead of the Dorian hurricane that is coming. They're taking care. I mean, that hurricane is coming through basically the entire East Coast, like as far up as like North Carolina, right? The only reason I decided to do this story is because it's a follow-up story to the story about the four nurses, the four healthcare providers from the Florida nursing facility that is getting charged with manslaughter after the Irma hurricane about a few years, in 2018. So after that hurricane, we had patients die in a nursing facility because the hurricane caused a power outage. So then Florida decided to tighten up its rules and regulations and making sure all of these nursing facilities, all of these healthcare facilities had a backup generator. So if any of those facilities lost power, patients wouldn't die of overheating, patients wouldn't die of dehydration. So a little more details here before we get into how we feel. Hundreds of the state's elder care facilities still don't meet all of the requirements for these emergency power plants under the state law. Instead, many sites are still asking for more time to get their backup power and fuel in order. I don't know if this is something that you can ask. I don't think you should be able to ask for more time, Tina.
Well, I don't really understand that. Asking for more time before what? Before they get fined? Before they get shut down? Before a hurricane comes through and someone dies? I don't. What are we waiting for?
That's the thing. That's the number one issue here. We can't ask the hurricane, slow down. Mm-hmm. A couple, 2, 3 of these facilities needs more time. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that that's the situation. I understand that there could be some hiccups and it could be a little difficult to try to get to meet all these regulations before the actual hurricane comes to hit, but they must have had some deadline set, and it's been a couple of years. So between August 2018 and August 2019, almost 300 facilities have been fined for failing to follow all of the regulations that are now set. And like I said, those regulations are that you need a backup generator to make sure that you have power in case of a power outage, right? The state's more than 3,700 nursing homes and assisted living facilities are now required to have the capability to keep indoor temperatures from going above 81 degrees for at least 96 hours after a power outage. And then that's when the big guns, federal government or the state government, can come in and help if necessary. But a lot of these places still do not even have a backup generator. Forget about 96 hours. They don't have 1 hour of time post a hurricane or a power outage. Tina, have you ever worked in an assisted living? Have you ever worked in a nursing home? Do you know what those facilities are like?
In nursing school, I was a sitter for a woman who was a resident at an assisted living facility. So I didn't work for the nursing home, or the facility, but I stayed there.
Oh, you stayed there. Right. Yeah. So for those people who don't know, and I think most people know what these nursing facilities and these assisted livings are like, but for those people who don't know, it's these patients, they don't have acute care needs. There are some nursing facilities where they have like a rehab section where they're more acute patients, but a lot of these patients are there for very long-term stays. I'm concerned the fact that all of these places don't already have a backup generator. I feel like in Massachusetts, I've never worked in a place where a backup generator wasn't part of the regulations of building or securing a license to have one of these facilities. I think it's absolutely insane that these facilities are functioning and running and have business and have patients in them, even though they don't have a backup generator, being in Hurricane City, hurricane area, Florida.
Well, I agree. And back in 2005, Hurricane Katrina came through. I remember there being a nursing home through that. I want to say that there were 34 people, I think, died in a nursing home because they drowned.
See, yeah,
and that was in 2005, and that's what's frustrating to me about this. This is not something that. This is something that you should be aware of if you live in the area. And I know that what happened in that area is the people who owned the facility chose to let them stay there, and they didn't evacuate them. And then the levees broke in New Orleans and it flooded. Exactly. And then they drowned. So they were acquitted because I guess the determination was that they didn't know the levees were going to break. And also the governor didn't declare mandatory evacuation. But my thing is, this has been going on long enough that if you choose to run and own operate a facility, willing and able to do whatever it takes to keep these people safe.
Exactly. No, I mean, that's 100%. Like, that's my frustration with all of this. It's like, to know that all of these places are functioning and are given licenses and are okay running businesses to take care of human beings. I mean, that's your job, right? And all of them, all of these places don't have backup generators, aren't prepared for storms, aren't prepared for hurricanes. It's ridiculous. But I know I'm being super negative, but you guys got to look at the bright side, because the vast majority of these facilities are taken care of. But even having one that isn't is one too many. But let me let y'all know before we move on to the next story. So when looking at both nursing homes and assisted living facilities, state officials say that 96% have either a permanent or a temporary generator, plans to get a temporary generator delivered, or a full evacuation plan in case of power outage. So 96% of these facilities are ready to go, right? So if you're living down in Florida, if you have some parents down in Florida, if you have anyone that you love down in Florida in a nursing home and assisted living, the 96% is taken care of. But the rest, that 4% is still 4%, way too many. Let's hope, let's cross our fingers. I did just see most recent news that the Dorian has moved from a hurricane level 3 to a 2. I don't know what those numbers mean, but I know less is better. So let's hope that the hurricane isn't too bad. Let's hope that everyone is still safe. And for the 4% of facilities that aren't taken care of, let's hope to God that they don't get flooded, that there is no power outage, so those patients are all safe.
I agree.
Yes. So story number 2, and this one is a little bit of a downer. This one is a little sad story to talk about, but it's very important that we talk about it, especially us both being nurses. It's a touchy subject, and I am going to ask you some real deep questions here, Tina, but it's important that we talk about this so we can prevent this from happening. And you might ask, Q, what are you talking about? Why are you so sad? Why are you so upset? It's because we're talking about nurse suicide. So, researchers from the University of California at San Diego recently conducted what they said is the first nationwide investigation into nurse suicide in more than 20 years. They found that both male and female nurses had higher rates of suicide than men and women in the U.S. Just hearing those facts alone, Tina, does that surprise you that nurses are committing suicide at a higher rate than the average population of the U.S.?
I don't know. I guess I would want some more information as far as the circumstances. When you work in the field that we do, we see a lot of really sad cases, and we see people suffering toward the end of their life. So I don't think I would be surprised to find out if we had some sort of statistical information on these people, that they had maybe a terminal illness or chronic illness that was somehow greatly diminished their quality of life. I think when you see people suffer, I think there would be a lot of people who would not want to be at the end of their life and have it a long drag out death. But then if it's just like I said, I'd want to see the numbers. But if it's people who are just kind of just depressed, I wouldn't be surprised with that either, because again, we see a lot of suffering, and it's not just those situations that's a natural death for people at the end of a natural life, but it's also young people in car accidents and people getting cancer, having to watch husbands lose wives and wives lose husbands, and people lose their children, and it can get to be a bit much.
It really can. And so I have some statistics, obviously, and we're going to talk about those. But it's really just the bare bones. And you're right, it is a very case-by-case situation, especially when you talk about suicide, because when you do talk about suicide, you do need to talk about the nitty-gritty. Why did that specific person decide to do that? It's not like a heart attack, like, oh, they had plaqued arteries. It's very different. It's very different. But here are some of the numbers. So this is just the general population of the U.S. So the U.S. suicide rate has risen in recent years, increasing by 28% in the past 2 decades to the highest it's been since World War II. Right? So it's increased by 28% in the past 2 decades, right? So that's everybody in the U.S., nurses included. So now let's talk about nurses outside of the big, of just the average folk here in the U.S. The researchers found a suicide incidence of 11.97 per 100,000 people among women who are nurses versus 7.58 per 100,000 of American women in general. So if you are a nurse, a female nurse, it's basically 12 people per 100,000 that is going to commit suicide versus just the regular women in the U.S., 8 people per 100,000 that would commit suicide. And that both those numbers are increased since World War II. I mean, I just want to let you know before I let Tina jump in here that for men, they don't have any specific category just for men because they are so little men in nursing. I always remind y'all that we are 12%, male nurses are 12% of the profession. But when you just check out all people in general, the study found that 39.8 per 100,000 people, both male and female nurses commit suicide versus the 28.2 per 100,000 people. So, they don't give us any specific details because, like I said, that you have to talk about each the person's specific situation leading up to that suicide. But Tina, I was super surprised when I heard this. I was super surprised because I don't know. I've heard and I've seen 1 or 2 stories of nurses committing suicide, but I was really surprised to find out that we are at a higher rate compared to the U.S. population, even considering the fact that the U.S. population's suicide rate has increased. That took me by surprise. I was really surprised. Maybe I'm just blinded by the people that I have seen in my own personal career, but I don't know. I didn't think that nursing was that stressful of a career.
Really?
I mean, no, it's not. I don't want to say.
I'm going to come work at your hospital.
I don't want to say.
I'm kidding.
I didn't want to say that it's not as stressful as a career, but it's very surprising. Like, I don't know. I really wasn't ready to. And it's not like it's by a little, like 39.8 per 100,000 person versus 28.2. That's a 10% difference. That is huge. That is a huge difference between nurses and everybody else.
Well, I think a lot of I don't know. I don't have any numbers on this, but I do know that a lot of nurses end up being on antidepressants and other type of medications to help with mood. I think there's definitely a direct correlation between taking care of sick people and being faced, when you have to face death every time you go to work for 12 hours, it's always in your face. You know, how our lives are going to end at some point. It's inevitable. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't have to, or they can put in the back of their minds. Yes. That death is inevitable for everyone. No, none of us are getting out of this alive. None of us. And
that's such a good point.
We're faced with it. We have no choice but to see. We see the beginning of life. We see the end of life. Even if I don't care if you're 112 or however old the oldest person has ever lived to, you're going to go at some point. And also you're faced with the reality of seeing people die without any friends or family around them because they get to an age that all of their friends and family. Have you ever experienced that? I have. There have been people who've been on our floor who are passing away, and we all take turns going in there. We will not let that person lay in there by themselves because there's nobody to be with them. We know they're passing, and no one is going to let them, die alone. So we literally take turns going into the room because I guess we all just know that I wouldn't want to die by myself.
Right.
So that is depressing. And it's something that kind of gets in your head at 3 a.m. when you're trying to go to sleep and you can't. Your brain, starts those thoughts, that are kind of morbid. I think that nurses are just forced to deal with those things that other people can just pretend, that's way in the future.
Yeah, no, I think it really is. I mean, I think you probably hit the nail on the head because you're right. I mean, you really, like, when we have bad days at work, it's like we lost a couple of patients. When other people had a bad day at work, I don't know, they lost their place in the Starbucks line, like they missed the deadline for a project. But like, a bad day for a healthcare provider, a bad day for a nurse. And when I was doing this research, it's clear as day that the suicide rate for doctors has always been much higher than the average population. But that's also a lot of med students and like just the workload, the 16-hour days, the 24-hour days that doctors have to work. But that's a different conversation for a different day. So healthcare workers' suicide rates are a little higher than the average. But I was super surprised by this. But you hit it right on the head. And I'm going to give you some major factors that are contributing to the nurse suicide. And this was done by, her name is Judy Davidson. And she is a nurse scientist. And she gave that these are some of the major factors that she thinks is leading to higher suicide rates in nursing. So number one, it's the nurse shortage. So despite the job opportunities, and there are many, many job opportunities out there, hospitals are still struggling to fill roles and problems. And the problem is expected to get much, much worse. Many nurses are also reaching retirement age. Those are the baby boomers, while enrollment at nursing schools is not rising fast enough to keep up with the demand. So you have to understand. So there's a nurse shortage already. And on top of this nurse shortage, we having that the baby boomers, the largest grouping population of a generation that we have, are now getting to the age where they're going to start retiring. And once they get to that age where they retire, someone's going to have to replace them. But these nursing schools aren't getting enough nurses to replace all of the staff that we are going to lose, which all means that less nurses. Each nurse is going to have much, much, much more work to do. Judy Davidson goes on to talk about self-care. She is quoted by saying nurses are known not to care for themselves as much as they care for others, which I think is clear as day every day. And then lastly, she points to the abuse that nurses face at work. The ANA says, the American Nurses Association says that 1 in every 4 nurse is physically assaulted on the job, and emergency room nurses are get assaulted, get abused at a much higher rate than all other nurses. Are any of those facts surprising to you, or do you think that these are just as like this is just every nurse's day to day?
The numbers aren't surprising to me at all. Nurses, we do get assaulted every shift. It's not those numbers are probably from reported incidences. How many times do we get hit or hit on or abused in some way, verbally, physically, and it's not reported? It's usually not reported because who has time for that? Nobody.
Right.
It would have to be very, very egregious. It would have to be pretty much it would have to be obvious. I mean,
right.
I guess you'd almost have to have like a mark or, something like that, or an injury that you literally have to report because you have to get help for it. It just happens too frequently. Nobody's going to keep doing that.
Oh, no. And I think the abuse that nurses face, it's like a double-edged sword because, and this is something that I have, I really try to fight back with the nursing community, the nursing culture, is because a lot of nurses are like, it's part of the job. Some of these patients are dicks. Some of these patients are assholes. They flirt with me. They grab me. They spit on me. They yell at me. They cuss at me. Sometimes they swing at me. But I always, especially the nurses I know in my personal life, I always say, fill out the report. At least put the incident report. Make it a quickie. Just get it done. Because I really don't like the idea that nurses think that this is part of the job. I hate that. But before we move on, I have to ask: do you agree that nurses take care of others more than they take care of themselves?
Yes, for sure. I think it's just part of it. Our job is to take care of other people, and we usually don't have time to do everything that we really wish we could do to take care of our patients. So if we don't have the time to take care of our patients the way we really would like to, what time does that leave for ourselves?
Right. I mean, like the thing I hear the most is I haven't had enough time to go take a bathroom break. I haven't had enough time to go, to eat a lunch. I haven't eaten lunch at all, period. Forget about it. So, I mean, that is just true and true all the way through. But before we end here, I just wanted to say that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, so in February, the American Nurses Association, the ANA, helped introduce a bill in the House that would require the Department of Labor to address workplace violence toward healthcare providers, as well as require workplaces to train and educate employees at risk of being harmed and implement a comprehensive plan to protect nurses from violence. That is a fantastic place to start, because the nurse shortage, as much as we want all of these things fixed, it's not a thing that can be fixed overnight, right? The nurses taking care of themselves, that is, I think, is worsened by the fact that there's not enough nurses on the thing. So I think it's a part of the nurse shortage issue. But the abuse is something that we really can't tackle head on, and I'm happy that the American Nurses Association is doing so, because goddamn it, someone needs to do something.
Agreed.
So moving on, ladies and gentlemen, all right? So I know that we don't have too much good news today, but this is, I don't want to say lighter news, but this is some advice. This is something that we could talk about without feeling too bad, too sad for ourselves, right? So the Atlanta Journal-Constitution has made a list after interviewing a bunch of nurses, asking them what their pre-shift habits are every single day, right? What are these pre-shift habits? Why do you do these pre-shift habits? And how does it help you throughout your shift? We are going to go through the story, and then I am definitely going to want to know, Tina, what your specific pre-shift habits are, because you're a fantastic nurse, Tina. You know, we know it, and the rest of your team knows it. So the Atlanta Journal interviewed nurses, asking them, just like I said, what their pre-shift habits are and why it's important. The structure of a daily routine is key in helping to deal with the inevitable unpredictability of the medical field. Additionally, a daily routine can benefit our health and mental well-being. So when I read through this article, right, and I'm happy that they interviewed nurses, but a lot of the stuff seems super, super simple and super straightforward. But I promise you, there are many, many nurses that don't do this every single day, and many, many nurses that can this would help them greatly if they decided to do this every single day before each shift. I know sometimes it's impossible. I know sometimes it's hard, but I think it's very, very, very important that they do so. So I'm just going to quickly go down the list. Number one, so there were 5 main pre-shift habits that these nurses spoke of. Number 1, they talked about sleep. Number 2, they talked about coffee. Number 3, breakfast or dinner. It says breakfast, but I also added dinner because I am a night shift folk, and I know people like to forget about them night shift folks. Number 4, bring snacks. And number 5, preparation. So, Tina, before you tell me what your pre-shift habits are, I want you to tell me which of those 5 do you think you get done most often, and which of those 5 do you not do at all?
I usually don't get enough sleep, so I guess I shouldn't start with that one. Sorry, I'm starting with the ones I don't do. Well, the coffee thing is just, I have to have my coffee every day. It's not even a question, and everybody at work knows it. They will literally look at me and be like, "Do you need coffee? Do you want me to go down and get it?"
That's right. Like, how do you get your coffee?
Yeah.
What kind of coffee do you like?
Well, I like Starbucks, but I mean, I'll just drink whatever. But if it's a Starbucks kind of coffee, I usually like it with 2% milk and vanilla bean powder.
Okay, so you have your specific go-to, and that's your wake me up. And I have to ask, before, is this something that you do even when you have your days off, or is it only when you go to work?
Okay, well, the coffee I drink every day, whether I work or not. But,
so that's good, because that keeps you on schedule even on work days.
But I will say, as far as a morning routine, I don't do the same. I only do my routine as far as work goes the morning that I'm working. As far as eating breakfast, I always eat breakfast before I go into work. Always. Because I have had times when I tried to not. Well, actually, what I said I was going to do is I don't want to eat breakfast at 6:00 in the morning, so I'll just go in and kind of get settled, and then I'll go downstairs and get breakfast, and then I blink twice, and it's 3:00 in the afternoon.
Right? That's how it always is. Even when you try to be like, you try to set yourself up. So no, I agree. So for me, sleep is a must. So if I don't sleep, like people know at work, 1 second. Just my other camera. So people know me at work. So if I don't get enough sleep, that day for me is ruined. People are like, oh my goodness, Q didn't get enough sleep. Just leave him alone. Help him if he needs it, because goddamn it, he hadn't enough sleep. For me, coffee is a hit or miss. Like I don't do coffee that much. I just need something to drink. So a bottle of water, coffee, tea, doesn't matter. As long as I have some fluid going into me, that's totally fine for me. The only thing here that I'm a little confused by. So they have here on one of the on the list as preparation, and their definition of preparation is meditation, listening to loud music on your way to work for distraction, or just getting to work early enough so you can look people up. What is your definition of preparation? Or are you the nurse that shows up 5 minutes after your shift is supposed to start, just rustling things together?
No, I have to. For one thing, I like to get into the parking lot about 15 to probably more like maybe like 30 minutes before I have to clock in. It's a 5-minute trek from the car to the where we clock in, because it's far, as you know. But I have things I do in the car. So I like to get there early and get a good parking spot. And then I have to sit there and like eat my breakfast and drink my coffee and scroll through my phone looking at different things. And I text my sister, or, just I have things I need to do. I have to do. And if I get there later, I'm like, one day I was joking around and I opened the door and one of my coworkers was coming by, and I said, hey, I'm going to be late. Could you go ahead and do huddle? And she was like, you're here at the same time I am. I'm like, I know, but I just got here. I got to sit in my car for 15 minutes. She was just like, get your butt out of the car. Obviously, I was kidding. I love it. But it is serious. It drives me crazy if I get there later than, if I don't get there early enough that I can sit there and have that time,
Yeah, no, and I think that's super important, and that's why I asked about preparation, because everyone's definition of preparation is different. But it is important to have that, whatever you need to get your mindset ready, from I'm rushing to get ready for work to let me think about what's going to happen to work, or let me settle myself so I'm ready for work. Whatever that means for you, if that is meditation, if that is loud music, if that is eating your breakfast in your car while scrolling through Facebook, that's your thing. Whatever your thing is, you need to have it done. Whatever you need to get done before you get started at work. I think this is huge for me, because when I started as a nurse, it was every day was a different thing, and every day is a different thing coming into work. Makes everything a little harder, right? You just need to be ready every day. Once you get to the door, once you check in, you want your mind to be in the right place, and you want to be ready to rock and roll. So final story for me today, and then we're going to talk to Tina about her story of the day. But this one is a sad one. This one, I decided to add this story to the lineup because it hurts me. And for all of you guys out there, you know that Medicare for all, healthcare is my number one issue when it comes to anything, any policy, any candidacy, any president. Like, healthcare for all, Medicare for all is my goddamn issue. And this story made me very sad for, let me just tell you. So an elderly couple near in Washington may have given into the stresses of financial struggles from looming healthcare bills. What that means is, let me just tell you. So dispatchers received a call on the morning of August 7th from a 77-year-old Brian Jones. He told the dispatcher, I am going to shoot myself. The dispatcher tried to keep the man on the phone while he activated the emergency services. However, Jones told the dispatcher that we will be in the front bedroom. A little bit more information before we start chatting. They found the man dead from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. He was lying next to his 76-year-old wife, Patricia Whitney Jones, who was also dead from a gunshot wound that investigators believed was caused by Jones. Detectives are calling this a likely murder-suicide and report that they found several notes citing ongoing medical problems for Jones's wife that the couple could not afford. So Tina, this story had me feeling all type of ways, especially because we do good nurse, bad nurse, right? So before we even talk about the medical bills and the actual situation, I want to ask you, do you think that this was a joint decision, or do you really think that he murdered his wife and then killed himself?
I don't know. This story it's unfortunately kind of common. It's not that unusual. It happens all the time. It happens. I don't know how often, but I know that I've looked into this when I was looking up information for assisted suicide, and I was shocked at how many of these situations occur every year. And I think a lot of times it is that one spouse is suffering from some sort of mental illness, like Alzheimer's or dementia, something that's cognitive, that is a slow decline, and the spouse is under a lot of stress because of that, and they just can't handle the all of the pressure and seeing their loved one go through that, and they just end it for both of them. So it could be that his I'd say it's probably more likely that she wasn't aware. That's
such a good thing you said that, because I was thinking the exact same thing, right? Because it says here that the majority of the bills that were cited were from her, and that she had a gunshot wound from him. So I that's exactly what I thought. It was because there was nothing in the description from the crime, from the investigation, that said that there was a struggle. So it was either she was like, yeah, shoot me, which I think is, I don't know if that's a thing that actually happens, or she just wasn't aware of the situation, which I think is most likely, because, right, like you said, this happens so often. Ladies and gentlemen, you have to understand what this means. We have two adults that are married, that are in love with each other. One might have been taking care of the other one more so than it being mutual. But we have two grandparents, two adults, two people that are in love that decide to end their own lives because they don't have enough money for medical bills. Tina, this just hurts to the core. Like, I hate when I see stories like this, because not only is this like preventable, like this is like they were living, they were alive. It's not like they had a shitty prognosis. It's just that they couldn't afford these medical bills. I hate stories like this. But it is the reality, and the only reason I talk about it is because I do believe that healthcare is a human right. And I don't think people should be asking these kind of questions, life or death questions, when it comes to their goddamn medical bills. That really bothers me.
Me too.
So Tina, this story is, I don't know how I feel about this story, right? Because you told me about the story, you sent me the Snapchat, the picture. I say Snapchat. You sent me the picture, but why don't you tell the folks who this person is, what are we talking about, and what the issue is?
Well, this is a story that I'm going to be doing on Good Nurse, Bad Nurse with the person that this happened to. So Joshua Strickland is a nurse who was at work, and I guess it was a new position that he had taken, and something happened to him where he was what we were just talking about, being verbally abused. Yes. And so someone made a comment to him, the patient made a comment to him after he was trying to assess her mental stability, and so he asked her the questions that are appropriate to ask, and then asked if he could do anything else, and she responded with kind of a rude comment, and then he thought, I think he just sent a thank you and left, but then thought it was just shocking. He said it really shocked him when she said that, so he took a picture of himself. He was on lunch. He took a picture of himself, and then he posted it on this a closed social media group. So this a closed group is a group of people who can't. They can see each other's posts and messages, but
the public can't.
Other people can't. and so it's a place where you supposedly you can go and rant and vent, not violate HIPAA, of course, or anything like that, but just sort of maybe blow off some steam or whatever, get advice about a situation. And so he just posted a picture, said what was said to him. It was something that could have been said by anyone, any patient. It wasn't an identifier in any way. No one would listen to that and say, oh, I know who that person is. He did not violate HIPAA. And then someone in that group screenshotted his post, and for whatever reason, I don't know if they didn't like him, or maybe he made a comment. I don't know. I haven't talked to him yet because we haven't recorded the episode. We're going to talk about it tomorrow, and then I'll post it hopefully next week, but I don't know the whole story. All I know really is kind of what is online. Yeah. So this person and he doesn't know who it is, but this person screenshotted it and then sent it to his employer. And then because it went viral and people were liking it and commenting on it, they said, well, they kind of gave him a verbal reprimand, but then they fired him. And they said, well, you can't be doing that. So they fired him. He lost his job over it. And it's just been a nightmare for him.
Of course, it's been a nightmare. And I know, so we're being kind of vague. So I'm going to actually just read the actual, the post that was in the Facebook group. And then, like she said, let me read it and then I'll tell you how I feel about it. Okay, so it says, so you'll see the picture for those, you'll just see it up on the screen. I took a new position on an acute med psych floor, and my very first day, as I was making rounds, patient denies suicidal ideation, homicidal ideation, mild depression. Is there anything I can help you with? He asks. You can fuck off and die. Okay, ma'am, I'll try my best. We'll continue to monitor. I think, first of all, when Tina sent me that, I was laughing. I sent back, ha ha, that is very funny. I didn't know that was a story, because in my head, I've seen this post, this description of a shitty day like this 1,000 different times in 1,000 different Facebook groups and goddamn open Instagram pages, not even closed groups. So the fact that this was in a closed group blows my mind that another nurse would send this out. If someone is sending this out, I feel like every nurse on social media, period, has to lose their job too, because everybody tells patient stories. Obviously, he was smart enough not to put any HIPAA violating or patient identifying information in there. But I think it's absolutely ridiculous that he lost his job. And I don't know. I thought us nurses had each other's backs. It hurts. It hurts to know that it was another nurse. It was someone else in that group that I ratted him out. And I have to let y'all know, because this is important to know, that the nurse that did rat him out, and I'm not going to rat out the nurse who ratted him out, but the nurse was from Massachusetts, which makes me feel even worse.
But aren't they always cute? Aren't they all? You know I'm kidding, but it just does seem to be. It's so ironic when we do these stories, and Massachusetts seems to always pop in somewhere. But I know it makes me sad. I know that we want nurses. I think the vast majority of nurses do support each other, and they are encouraging. But then there are always those people who just want to cause trouble, and they're always going to exist in every profession, not just nursing.
Yeah, no. And I just want to stress to everybody, you guys heard me. And for those who are watching, you see it on the screen. Honest to God, though, that's the most tame I've seen in those kind of posts ever. Right. And he in the post, I give him credit. I would have felt bitter. I would have said some kind of words. I would have said something to the patient. He was as kind as a nurse as a human being can be, and then all of this happens to him. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I think it's horrible. And just tell him the shout out from Q the nurse the next time when you speak to him, because god damn it, I hope he finds a job. I hope he has a job right now and good things are coming his way, because that's a shitty situation to be in.
Yes, exactly.
All right, folks. So thank you very much for those who are listening. I really do appreciate you guys. If you guys are listening to this on podcast version, please rate, review, all that good stuff. But Tina, before we let the folks go, before we talk about the afternoons report, why don't you tell them where you can find them, where they can find you? Excuse me.
They can find me on Good Nurse Bad Nurse at goodnursebadnurse.com on our website, or GNB and Podcast on Instagram, and Good Nurse Bad Nurse Podcast on Facebook.
Yeah, if you guys listen to me, follow me on any of my social, you've seen me post about Good Nurse Bad Nurse a bunch of times. Reason being is because I've been on Good Nurse Bad Nurse a bunch of times. And the reason I've gone a bunch of times is because it's a fantastic goddamn podcast. You best to be there. You best to go listen. Go check her out. It's good. There's going to be a link in the description box below. Please go check them out. But for those folks who are living life on the edge, I want to stay an extra couple of 2, 3, 4 minutes while we get to know Tina a little bit more. Hang out, because this is the afternoons report, and during the afternoons report, I like to do this after we do the news, so we could just talk about life and the current situation, and just a little lightheartedly. And there's not enough there's not facts. We're not reading off the script. This is just human beings having a conversation. So Tina, I call this the nursing news, and I'm happy you came on, because we do these news stories on Good Nurse Bad Nurse before we talk about the bad nurse every week. But I always get a little nervous because I don't want to poke and prod. First of all, it's your podcast. Second of all, right, it's not a political podcast. It's about good nurses and bad nurses. But since this is a political podcast, I am going to poke and prod. So, Dina, I'm going to talk about your political views. I'd like to know because you just live in a different area from me. Everyone that I've had a conversation with about these political issues currently has been people that live around me, which means they think a lot like me. You live very far away from me, so that's why I want just some general insight. Obviously, I'm not going to ask the details of who you voted for your entire life, but I do want general information. So you did hear me say that Medicare for all, healthcare is my number one issue. It doesn't matter the situation, where, how, when. Healthcare is my number one issue, and I think Medicare for all is definitely the way to go. Do you have any thoughts about that? Have you even looked into that? Do you know if you want Medicare for all? Do you think our current healthcare system is the way to go? What are your feels about Medicare for all?
I think that everyone deserves health care, and I've always said that and always believed that. It's not something that is new for me, and definitely not something I'm ashamed to say. I don't know about the concept of Medicare for all, because I would have to look into what that means. Where the money comes from, who's paying for it, what health care is provided through that. So what system would be the best one to model, in other words, I guess. And I don't know that. I just know that it should be a basic human right that people are cared for if they're sick. We have facilities. There is this, especially that in the United States, our country is too wealthy to not be providing for everyone, and not just the people who have insurance or who can have a good job that has benefits, or that are wealthy enough to just buy their own private insurance. It should be everyone is benefiting from capitalism in this country. The very, very wealthy are benefiting from the labor of people who are making $8, $9, $10 an hour. Those people who are very wealthy are wealthy because of the people who are working for them. If they didn't have someone working for them, they would not be able to have the money. Some of those people have that money because they're making more money with the money that they got. Exactly. They all got it somewhere. It all had to come from labor at some point. And I'm not anti-capitalist or anything like that, but I do believe that our society is benefiting from a labor force. And I think everybody, every single citizen deserves to have some basic rights. And one of those is absolutely health care.
Oh, most definitely. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. I'm not here to argue with you, but I am going to just tell you, I'm not like I agree with you 100%, like 100%. And like the only reason that I'm like hardcore about Medicare for all is because, I mean, It's just like, it's a human right. It's a human right. People shouldn't be in a situation where they have to ask themselves, can I go to the hospital? I'm in pain. I'm sick. I want to feel better. They shouldn't have to ask themselves, do I have enough money to feel better? Do I have enough money to be healthy? That's something I don't think, especially like you said, the amount of money that this country has and has accumulated. So just big picture. We don't need to know the details here, Tina, but the Democratic primary has been going on for at least 3-4 months. I know we're still super early into the race. We've only had 2 debates on. We still have 162 people on the Democratic side. I don't even know if you're a Democrat or a Republican, but either way, you don't have to say who you are, where you stand. But is there a number one candidate for you? Is there someone that you're cheering for, or are you just sitting back and soaking it all in?
I'm definitely sitting back and soaking it all in. I'm definitely not at a point that I would be able to decide something like that for myself. So I'm definitely sit back and watch, listen to what people say, because I have in the past decided early on who I thought I was behind. Yeah, and then as the campaign went on, things come to light. People say things openly in public, and you're just like, I thought I liked that person. And here I was telling everyone that I liked that person. So I definitely want to reserve my right to decide on who I'm going to promote before I'll wait a little while before I say something like that, because good grief, people are capable of doing a lot of things, and they will surprise you.
Oh, I hear you. No, I hear you. And I think it's smart. Like if you're hardcore into it, like I do expect an answer. But if you're not like knee deep into all of the policy and the politics, I do think it's very important. And I think most important is to have an open mind, right? Because if you're not willing to change your mind, like myself, I'm just not. It's too late for me. But Tina, I'm happy you are, right? If you are not willing to change your mind, then then why are you listening? Why are you paying attention? Why are you even watching the debates if you don't want to change your mind? If you are willing to change your mind, then there's room to grow, there's room to expand. I love it. I love it. But do you see anyone in the race right now that if they were the nominee, you would vote for Trump instead?
I did not.
I had to ask.
I'm sorry. Good. No.
So that's a no. Oh, that's fine. And then so for those who do follow me, I promise we're almost done here. But for those who do follow me, I just made a post that has been a little. So there's the comments has been a little. Instagram is a really good place for me because most people are super positive on Instagram. Facebook is where people get a little toxic. But Instagram, for the most part, has been really good. But this has been the first post that I've put up where people are going at each other. And the post was about dating people at work. Is that something you think is okay? And I mean, when I say dating people at work, I'm not talking about anyone that's not a nurse. This is specifically for nurses. And when I say at work, I mean on the same unit. Do you think it's okay? Do you think people should be dating? Or do you think that policy should be straight up, don't shit where you eat? You are not allowed to date someone that you are working with on the same unit?
Obviously, it would depend on policy, but if the hospital doesn't have a problem with it, it's going to just be up to the person. I think that everyone should stop and think about what ramifications that could have in the future, the complications. Because if you're dating someone that you literally work right alongside, and then you have to work with them after, if you break up, whatever weird stuff happens, that just really could make for a very awkward situation, or having to transfer to another floor. I don't think that should be something that the hospital should be getting their business in. But if they have a policy that you don't, then definitely you don't want to risk your job. But otherwise, it's up to you. Just kind of use your better judgment, because that can cause a lot of issues. People are just.
No, I hear you, and I agree with you. Look, listen, I don't. So I don't agree. Well, I agree with you in the sense that people should make their own judgments, but I really do think people should be able to date their coworkers. I think it's a great thing to do, but you have to be, like you said, very smart about it. But in the hospital that I worked at, I'm pretty sure that there is actually a policy against it, because I do know that a couple that used to date, and I don't know if it's specifically because one of them moved up and became a team leader, but one of them became a team leader, and then they ended up separating the two people. So one of the nurses had to go work at a different unit. So I know in my hospital that there is an actual policy that says you can't be in the same unit if you guys start to date. If you do start to date, just know that one of you guys has to leave the unit. I think those are also some smart policies, especially if one works as a charge nurse, one is a team leader, one is the nurse manager, because that is the power dynamic. And it's not fair to everybody else if you're boo-boo and you end up giving them the best assignment, or you don't give them the best assignment. But even if you don't, people start to feel some type of way. People always start to feel some type of way.
Yeah, it just causes a lot. I feel like it would cause a lot of problems, but.
Yeah, well, Q likes to live life on the edge. So lastly, before I let you go, Tina asked me to go watch this movie yesterday, because I told her that I'm not sure who the Beatles were. Okay, I told her that I'm not a fan of the Beatles, right? Because I haven't had the Beatles, like I just didn't grow up with them. But Tina told me to go watch this movie, and I watched it with my sister. Shout out to Nabila, thank you for watching it with me, because I know I wouldn't have gone without you. But it was fantastic. First of all, I think the premise of that movie, for those who don't know, basically some guy falls off a bike. He wakes up in a different reality, I guess, where the Beatles never existed, but he loved the Beatles. He was a fan of the Beatles, and he knew all the songs of the Beatles. And luckily enough, he had a decent enough voice where he could sing. So he becomes this insane, huge pop star, mega star, because he remembers all the Beatles songs, and he's basically trying to rewrite them for that reality that never had the Beatles. And it was like, the premise of the movie was fantastic, right? And after that movie, I went to go look up the Beatles music, because him singing the Beatles songs was nice to hear, but there wasn't any scenes where it had full on Beatles song from start to finish. It was like snips and bits of it, right? Basically what I'm asking is, are the Beatles really that good, Tina?
Seriously? You watched that movie and you have to ask me that question. Okay, let me just put it to you this way. The Beatles music has influenced modern rock and roll, probably modern music, period, to the point that if it really never existed, you wouldn't recognize modern music. I don't think they really were. It's kind of hard. I don't really know how to put that into words, but it's like that when they came along, they changed everything about music, modern music. And they had so many. I mean, name another group, performer, entertainer, individual, duet, band, name anyone who has generated as many hit songs as they did.
I think that was one of the biggest takeaways that I got from watching that movie, was that, holy shit, they did a lot of music, like a ton of music, which I always respect. I mean, they put out so much music, right? When I was listening, when we were listening to it on our ride home, we were like, holy jeez. Oh, and yes, so there are a bunch of songs that everybody knows. Like there's like everybody, like the Yellow Submarine, like there's just big ass Beatles songs that everybody knows. But I don't know. Maybe I need to let it soak in. Maybe I need to let it enjoy. But ladies, I just wanted to let y'all know that I'm working. Some of these songs, it's hard to start appreciating them so late after the time has moved. But I
hope there are no British people that listen to this, that watch this channel. Well, I feel sorry for you.
I hear you. So Tina, thank you for doing this. I really do appreciate it. You guys, I know I said that you guys have to go check out Good Nurse, Bad Nurse to go check out Tina, but you guys should go listen to Good Nurse, Bad Nurse, because you could also listen to me. because I'm on there quite a bit, and I really, really, really do enjoy doing it. And it's a fantastic podcast. If you're a nurse and if you like any crime stories, Dateline, 48 Hours, any of that stuff, Law and Order, you are going to fall in love. You're going to be obsessed with Good Nurse, Bad Nurse. And Tina's a fantastic host, so please go check it out. I'll catch you all later. Deuces. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate this. If you guys were informed or educated in any way, shape, or form by these stories, please hit that like button. If you liked my presentation of the news, I really suggest you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know every time Q the Nurse drops some hot, fresh press news. Thank you. Catch you next week. Deuces.